love you, Andra.
Hi, everybody. I am crazy Andra Annette, and welcome to this week's of Soul's Code. So tonight I am with my co-host Lorilet Monegro, and we were just talking
You love
behind the
that.
scenes because we get together and we're always gifting Gabby. So we were talking about appreciation and what it really is to be in business and things like that. So we've been in healthcare and now we're online doing healthcare too. So it's a very different scenario. Clearly, when people are sick, they're not out there getting to know, like, and love us because they come to us at very humbling times and they're just kind of sent to us and we help them, right? So it is a different scenario. But we were talking about building rapport and what it is to really be in business and to grow and to learn when you do something wrong, and it's humbling because in the healthcare field, in your field, in my field, we have to be willing to say, I don't understand this, or I need help. Can you explain this to me? Because if we don't, the patient's outcomes might not be so good, right? So that's how we learn, that's how we grow. We do have to be those people. So being online, it's very different though, as we were talking behind the scenes. So let's have that conversation. There are some people that are in business and they don't know how to accept criticism and learn from that experience. So and that can be in any business. It doesn't matter what you're doing. When you're in the service based business, you are here to give service. So if someone's not happy with the service, they used to say a customer is always right. Well, they are, because if someone's not happy with the level of service that you're delivering, you have to find out why and
Mm.
ends the situation amicable. Everybody's not for everybody, right? So, uh, because they might become your customer again, or it might be something you can really resolve. So, if someone tells me, this doesn't work for me, I have to know why it doesn't work so that I can better provide for them, or I could look at my business model and make corrections. So it's maybe they say, well, this is really hard to understand. I just don't get this, Andra. So then I have to look at it and say, well, maybe I'm talking from that practitioner, and maybe I need to break it down simpler for people to really understand and apply it, right? So, but that is how we learn and that is how we grow. So you were saying some very insightful things. So I want to give you that floor.
Thank you so much, Andra. Well, the truth is that sometimes, we either experience other people who wrong us, right? We feel wronged because we weren't understood or heard or even felt cared for, right?
Mhm.
And you know, the same thing when I've had a client and a client says, "Hey, I don't feel that my child is making the progress that I expected." Well, that's feedback. And while that feedback may not feel the most amazing at the moment, that's a great opportunity to then actually go deeper and start figuring out, wait a minute, what is this unmet expectations? Because part of how this happens is because there's some unmet expectation, either because there might have been a promise made or because there's an expectation that the person created by themselves just by the sheer desire to make change happen. And so, I mean, I've had this experience. I don't know about you personally, but I've had this experience when I've had to then sit down with a parent, go over the different components that support progress or the lack of progress. Sometimes progress is happening, but not as fast. And so the client may feel very upset because they had an expectation. They were like, well, I thought that my kid would be, out of speech in 3 months. meaning this would go away right away and you would just nip it in the bud kind of thing, without realizing that there are other components that could be at play.
Hmm.
I think us giving people to express their dissatisfaction and stepping back, right? Stepping back um, helps us both as a practitioner and also as the person who is providing that service. Because if we're seeking to provide a service, we need to be mindful of that. Not always it will be positive.
I'm looking at my dog. She's over there.
Oh, I don't
Well,
see your dog. I don't
no,
see.
she's over there looking at me like she hasn't been feeling well. She's my little honey. I do understand the unmet in my line of work. I do see that. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I have a lot of people that when they don't lose weight the first 3 days, they're panicked. And I'm like, just relax, let it happen, Um, because a lot of times the first weight you lose anyway is like the water weight and stuff like that. But people don't understand that if you're not losing weight and you're going for someone for help because you haven't been able to do it, there's damage somewhere in your body. So you have to repair that damage. That's part of the process to get the body to work together again, to get that outcome that you want. So sometimes it will either happen very quickly in the beginning if they don't have a real issue and it's just they really don't know how to eat or how to meal plan or what good nutrition is. They may get that very quick and then come to halts, right? Or they might not get anything the first week or two and then see immediate change and continued change. So it's different with everybody because in my line of work, there's so much going on. I'm always saying that you can't give a generic diet to the world and expect that it's going to help everybody. And the reason being is everybody has different genetics. Everybody. We are all raised culturally different. So there's different factors in play. So a lot of those different cultural foods might have caused problems in the body, hypertension, cholesterol issues, and all those things that are working against what you're trying to correct, right? So you have to find a specific diet that's going to help that cholesterol and that hypertension while losing weight safely. So and see what their genetic disposition is. Do they have a history of cancers and all these things in their family? So you find something that's going to work for them. Do they have thyroid? Do they have gut health? So you have to really tailor it to that person because Mary's not going to get the same results as Joe, right? So, I mean, I do programs online, but they're all tailored to the
Right.
original person. I do a deep 1 hour consult with people and find all that information out. I remember one lady looking exhausted by the end of my consult. She was
Mhm.
like, wow, this is really thorough. I said, I'm sorry, some of these are very personal questions, but I do have to know, because it makes that process for her easier.
Yeah, but I think also, to the point that I was making before, that is exactly why it's so important to revisit, right? And to
Absolutely.
reassess as we're doing, because yeah, a client may think or perceive that they're not making progress, right? Not all progress is always out there noticeable. Sometimes progress is not linear, right? Is not a direct 90-degree angle kind of curve that we're going always. Sometimes we kind of have to go back and we drop down in an area because we're improving in another, and so on and so forth. It's not a perfect straight upward line all the time. So that's the opportunity to reclaim whatever might have been missed. It's an opportunity to improve on the goals and reassess if the goals are not the goals that we should be working on anymore, because maybe we've met certain goals and now we need to aim higher. And so a criticism doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. Sometimes those becomes opportunity for us to get closer to our clients, get closer to the parents that need maybe more support. And I'll tell you, I've had parents that sometimes it's not really that they're not seeing progress, but rather they're in so much emotional pain around the needs that their children are experiencing that they just feel overwhelmed, and they
Mm.
just want to be able to have a conversation and talk about those fears that are within them. And sometimes they don't know how to channel that. And you have to have a good heart and a good mind so that your brain and heart can function together to provide the best care possible for that parent in that moment in time. They need us to kind of just listen, process what they're saying, discuss where we're at, understand where they would like to go with the goals and how to support them. And you'd be surprised, at least for me, things kind of then smooth out tremendously, because then they realize, wait a minute, I was just really frustrated. They themselves come to the conclusion and then they tell me, I'm sorry, I didn't really feel this way. Really, what I'm more concerned is for the future. And I'm worried about that my baby may need more than what he's getting right now. And it's not about you right now in time, but it's more my own personal concern that maybe in the future, I don't know, my child may need a residential support or, and they don't want to voice that right away. Um, so I don't know if that
I think
happens.
constructive criticism is good. I've had people in my nursing career um be rude because what they were experiencing, and I'm always going to be that supporting and loving, but I'm always going to stop you and say you can't talk to me like that. I
Mhm.
I've I've had doctors get rude and tell them, not today. It
Right.
doesn't happen. So you do have to set boundaries, but but with the patient, it's very different, right? So
Right.
you do have to listen. You have to listen, and sometimes
Mhm.
listening to them is looking at that nonverbal, and
Mhm.
then telling you, like if you were telling a parent that their child is getting better and they're getting uneasy and fidgeting in the chair, they're really telling you that they're not seeing that, and it's making them uncomfortable, and they want to tell you, I'm not seeing it. But so
Mhm.
you can actually, if you're listening
Mhm.
to that verbal language, sometimes that will tell you more than they're saying. So when you are talking about the child getting better and they're getting uneasy and uncomfortable, they're telling you that they're not seeing that, or it might not be progressing, or that they might have fears that this is all that's going to happen, that the
Mhm.
child might not really progress. So there's always something going on. But I think it's people. We often don't put ourselves in other people's place, that unless we're in it, and then we kind of get that understanding once something that's happened to us. Like I was just doing another show and I was talking about death, and I've been on the receiving end helping clients move through that a lot in my life. But that didn't brace me for the impacts when it happened to me. It was a very different scenario. So being there and loving and supporting someone through it, we still don't always know how people internalize those situations and what's really going on the inside with them, because everybody experiences even the same situation. So if you're sick, two people show up with hypertension, they're both going to present different. So
Mhm.
two people could be in the exact same situation and experience it very different because they were raised different. They have different belief systems, and their feelings are very different from each other. So we do have to have a little more give in life and a little more acceptance and allow people to feel and go through those emotions. It's not always easy when
It's
you're
not.
in that situation.
It's
But
not. It's not. You're right
and it
about
takes practice. It takes practice, you know. I was Nurse Ratched for a while there. So
I think we all kind of start with significant limitations in terms of depth, right? Because at least I'm going to speak for myself, but I think from the beginning there was always my desire to help. You know, originally I thought I would be um, a lawyer, then I thought I would be a doctor, you know, and then I said, no, I'm not going to be that. I became a speech language pathologist, but there's always been that desire to help
hmm,
people. And I think in the process, I've spoken to you in other interviews about how, in that process of reflecting, what I needed, right, to feel also empowered to be able to do that. It's also the selfishness aspect of it because we all are in search of something in life, right? I also wanted to feel that fuel, that energy. It feeds me. There's a bit of that component that is selfish in it, you know, because it
yeah,
just kind of fuels me. Um, and it gives me a lot of energy. But over the course of my training and over the years, as I understood, right, that there's this emotional, painful component and a sense of loss, and it's like almost undergoing a death of a dream, the death of literally the person you imagined that you would have and the outcomes that you thought you would have, and reimagining all of that into something different, maybe even unknown. And then I kind of connected with that understanding, and so I tried to just kind of hold a lot of space when I'm dealing with parents, and especially when I had my private practice in my office after 13 years. You know, I always had that space where I would just stay silent. I didn't have to add or subtract or anything. And I just kind of let whatever they would say, no matter how, whatever it was, I would just let it be, you know, without judging it, without saying good, bad, or anything. Just kind of let them just be. And I would just say, okay, that's interesting. And I would jot down whatever they said, but I wouldn't add or I wouldn't subtract. And then I would guide them. And I think we have to do more of that, which is allow people to just decompress, to just be open, to just say what they feel without having to judge it. Um,
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think that because we're different, everybody wants to be seen for who they are. Everybody wants to be heard. There's no sweeter sound than your own name, right? But we don't often give that to other people. And in a service-based business, you need to be able to give that
yes.
to make that work and to help them reach whatever goal it is. Because if you can't listen to what they need and what they want and hold that space where they feel valued and appreciated,
Yep.
then they're not going to get to those outcomes. Because especially in your line of work, they need to feel valued. Some of them have been treated very differently because
Yep.
of what's going on with them, and they probably don't feel very valued. and
Right.
and and so a lot of your job is giving them that self-confidence back and letting them know that it's okay to be just who they are. so
Absolutely.
so that's big. So we
This is
do.
actually one of the fundamental things I do in my beginning aspects when the first beginning components of how I work with the children is really building that sense of accomplishment and that sense of confidence, self-worth, and that sense of I can do it, I can do it. So I don't right away start them on things that are going to challenge. I need them to feel continuous success for a moment so that they can build that confidence because they already come with enough of people saying can't do it, doesn't understand, doesn't this, doesn't that. A lot of no, 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 no. And I don't know if people forgot, but at least I was taught about the zone of proximal development and how the zone of proximal development, Vygotsky's theories, can help us support children in their learning. But to me, I interpret it even deeper than that. It's not just the actual component that needs to be taught or the actual content information that the child needs to grasp. But more than that is that sense of autonomy and empowerment that comes from understanding what the zone of proximal development is and how I should pair you up with peers that can support you in building you up. And it's critical because when a child feels that they can do it, that they can master even the simplest of things, and we can show them the path to that errorless aspect of that win, then they own that. And it's like anything, right? You feel like, wow, $1 million. How do you feel when you win a race? You feel amazing. And
Mm.
so that's more of what we need to also provide those opportunities so that then we can build that, not in a sense of building a false confidence, but rather equip them with the
It's not
strength
a
and the
fault. It's not a,
foundation.
but it's not, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's not a false sense of accomplishment because even as adults, I can tell working with adults who in their past was treated like they were, I don't know, less than or
Mhm.
incapable or told that they couldn't achieve things because they're still carrying it in their adulthood. They're
Yeah,
afraid to try. And I can see it very clearly that maybe they weren't taught how to do to take care of themselves because they were taught that it wasn't that important. Come on, we're late. Who cares how you look type of thing, right?
right.
And making them feel like why wouldn't someone care about how I look, right?
Mhm.
So those little things that are said to children and things those do matter, you know.
Big time,
It definitely matters. So,
big time.
and because even in when I start with people, it is about getting people those quick wins. I give them
Of course.
something that I know that they're going to be able to crush. I'm not going to say, okay, you're going to take this, and this out of your diet, and just start eating vegetables because nobody would succeed. So
Right.
I do things based on wins I know they can get, and part of that process is finding out their strengths because people gravitate towards their strengths. So we work on their existing strengths and make those weaknesses their strengths, right? But we do that while honoring this,
Absolutely,
you know?
absolutely. It's number one. And, unfortunately, many people want to somehow feed into deficits, right? And deficits are there that we can work on, but they're not the primary holders of the way forward. A deficit will never be the focus to bring someone forward, is the strengths, so that then you can pick up on all of those weak areas as you go along and you build scaffolds, almost like when you're building an actual structure. It's
It is.
just that we're not building a physical infrastructure but it's the concept behind it where you need to support that creation. And that requires intent, right? There has to be deliberate focus and intentionality in creating that aspect of the knowledge base that we're trying to have the child get. For example, in my case, when I talk about the children, um, and it means that you have to be carefully thinking about and understanding the client in terms of their needs and in terms of the ultimate goal, right?
And you can't be afraid to revisit that too, because
Yes.
sometimes what you think the goal is in the beginning might
Yeah.
change over time. Like for me, someone might say, I want to lose 10 pounds, and they really want to lose 50 pounds, but they don't think that's probable. So they're going to just accept they because they don't have that confidence yet, right? So
Mhm,
just get me to my first 10 pounds. Or
mhm,
that child might not think that they'll be able to speak linguistically correct
mhm,
ever,
mhm,
and they just, okay, just teach me the alphabet so I can form sentences, right?
mm,
So and you take things and you break them down into small achievable parts, and then you teach them, like if they have a strength here, you find out how they can take that strength and apply it to their weakness. Well, what are you doing over here that you can apply to here? Because you, like, let's say someone's really good at meal planning, right? And they're really good at cooking. Okay, well, how can you take what you know about meal planning and cooking and time management and apply that to exercise where you can be consistent in it? So you find ways to complement what they're already doing, as you would with a child, and you slowly but surely build that foundation back up. But it is
mhm.
about building from the inside out, because the child has to feel good. The child has to be able to trust you and know that you have their best intents, and the
Yeah, and
family has to trust you too. So
yeah.
sometimes the kids' needs might not the child's, I don't like to say kids when I'm talking about goats here, but sometimes the parents' desired outcome might not be what the child wants. The child might just want, hey, I have a spelling bee and I'd really like to get up in front of the classroom, but and say it without a lisp, or I mean, because you treat all different kinds of kids, not
Mhm,
just disadvantaged, right? So and I'd really like to do that. And the mother wants them to not only fix the problems here, but learn 3 other languages, right? So you you have to kind of create a balance and see where we can meet. But at the end of the day, the real client is that child, right? So
absolutely. And this is why it's so important to get to know, what drives that child, right? Definitely one of the key things is to have an inventory, a real understanding of not only the strengths, but also the things that motivate them. Because when the tough gets going, those motivators can be pulled out and provide that look forward, right? It's sort of like I'm working for, I don't know, if the motivator is reading a book, a specific book that they love. Okay, so you know what? We're going to say all of these articulation drills that we're going to practice because you're mispronouncing whatever sound it is that we're working on. And when we're done, we're going to read your favorite book because maybe that's one of the big motivators that this child has. And so things don't have to be punitive, they can always be additive. I personally like to do a lot of additive stuff as opposed to punitive. I find that punitive measures or sense of loss just simply don't work, and they create a lot of resentment and distance the child instead of building the
agreed.
capacity to love and the capacity to interact. And so I'm very strategic about how I kind of help children evolve from that inner hiding and not speaking and not attending. And it's by letting them know they are 100% safe. Children will push boundaries just to see if it's really true that you got their back. They will
Of
do things.
course. But that's
So
natural.
yeah. And so we have to start realizing that sometimes parents may not fully go on board with understanding that these levels of trust, are kind of like badges of honor. They're earned, they're
Mm,
not a given. This
yes,
idea, this top down like a hammer, well, you do as I say, doesn't necessarily create the kind of relationships that we want to build, right? When we want to build both communication and connection, we have to be willing to hear, right? Those positive, those negatives, to go through the process, the temper tantrums, the different modes of communication that would come. And those
But
are not always
we,
gonna be pretty.
no, they're not always, but we have to be able to do that in all walks of life, not just our business and, not just our day to day, but even in our relationships with our families, because we do have to be supportive of them too. And often we do neglect them because we expect them just to understand. On a brighter note, we are going to close out this show because it's getting late here in New York. We are going to close out this show. But this is what I'd like to say to the audience. I think that there's a lot of people out there that have needs. Their children may have needs, and maybe those needs are not being met. And maybe we can support you in another way. And I think that nobody really understands your needs but you. So
Mhm.
I would like to hold that space for you here with Lorilet. So if you're someone that has a child that's having speech issues or a medical issue and you're not getting the support you need, or you feel like you need resources, or you want to talk about your story, what it's like, so people can understand what it's like having a child that's maybe on the spectrum or autistic, and how hard it is to really get them services and things like that, then we want to support you on that journey and we want to hear your story, because it's only through sharing those experiences that we can really create change at the state level or wherever we need to. So I'm a nurse, so I am also an advocate. That's my other role, my other hat.
Yeah.
So if I can really support you in any way or share your story, we would love to do that for you. So you could reach out to myself or Lorette Monegro at any time on any of our challenges channels. She's on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm on Instagram and I'm everywhere. Just look for the crazy lady. Um so
Andra is everywhere, but really it's true. We would want to hear from people who would want to have these conversations, right?
yes, so that we
We
can get more services, but also so that we can, I think a lot of times people don't see the children that are in the scenario, and they don't see that these children are just like any other child. And we want to help really shed that light that this is just another child. He's not different. We want your child to have as normal life as possible. And in order to do that, we have to let people see that child, right?
Right. And this is exactly why hiding is not a good choice. This is why, not talking about what the needs are is not a good choice. What we need to focus is on removing barriers and
Correct.
on also providing the needs, that meeting them, right? So if they
And
need
finding
occupational therapy, get them the occupational therapy.
finding those
Don't feel bad
resources.
about getting that resource or that help. Instead, be like, okay, this is what's going to enable my child to manage certain things in a way that are appropriate for themselves to be able to do what they got to do. It's not about changing the child, it's about supporting them so they can have the most optimal life that they can, you know?
Yes.
So hopefully people will reach out
Will
to us.
reach out to us. I work in the community. A lot of people don't realize that I spend every weekend in the community helping children just like this. And I find that a lot of times they're not getting the resources they need. And that puts an overwhelming burden on the parents. And it's very difficult. And so I kind of go in to help out on those days. And I know what it's like for them, and I know that there are services available for them because I see children in the same situation getting them. So I help the families fight for those services because they are entitled, right? So it's just like anything. If you needed to feed your child, you would go to the store and get food. So if the child has another need, then you're entitled to that need. So if you need these resources, please reach out to you. I mean, to us, reach out to you. I'm tired. Could you tell? So please reach out to us because we really do want to support you, and we are going to be having these conversations on a regular basis. So I hope you're enjoying the show, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Andra Annette, and this is Lorilet.
Lorilet.
Have a great day, guys.
Bye. Thank you so much, everybody.